My son Mark told me yesterday I had to empty my husband Robert's toolbox by noon today, or he would haul it to the dump himself. I pried open the rusted latch, and beneath a layer of old wrenches, my fingers brushed against a small, cold metal box. Inside, wrapped in oilcloth, was a stack of Polaroid photos. The first showed a woman's face, pale and still, her eyes wide open. The second was my sister Lily, smiling in the same blue dress she wore the day she vanished 45 years ago. My heart hammered against my ribs. I slid the photos into my apron pocket just as the doorbell rang. Mark's voice called out, "Mum, you done in there?" I forced a calm tone. "Almost, dear." But my mind was screaming. Robert, my gentle husband of 50 years, had secrets, and I needed to know how deep they went before anyone else found out. I needed to hide the evidence and figure out what Robert had done. My whole life felt like it was falling apart. Every memory of our marriage now felt like a lie. I felt the pressure build as Mark lingered in the hallway, his impatience almost palpable. I quickly shoved the toolbox under a workbench and pasted on a smile. "Just sorting through some keepsakes," I told him. He nodded, but his eyes scanned the room. Then my phone buzzed, a reminder for my grandson's school play tonight. The ordinary world was still turning, but mine had stopped. I needed a safe place to examine these photos, somewhere no one would think to look. I decided on the attic. It was dusty and rarely visited, full of Christmas decorations and old baby clothes. As I climbed the creaking stairs, a floorboard groaned under my weight. Inside, I spread the photos on an old trunk. There were 6 women in total, all with the same vacant stare. Lily's image made my hands shake. Robert had always comforted me when I cried over her disappearance. Now I knew why he seemed so certain she was gone. A pattern emerged. Each photo had a date scribbled on the back in Robert's handwriting. Lily's was just weeks after she went missing. The dates spanned decades. I heard the front door slam. Mark had left. But then the house phone rang, and I recognized the number. It was the local historical society, where Robert volunteered. Why would they be calling now? I descended the stairs slowly, my legs unsteady. The answering machine clicked on. A cheerful voice invited me to a memorial event for longtime volunteers, including Robert. They mentioned a donation box of his personal effects was still at the society, waiting for me to collect. My throat tightened. What else was in that box? I needed to get there before they decided to dispose of it. But first, I had to act normal for my family tonight. I tucked the photos into a recipe book on the highest shelf. As I turned to leave, I noticed a faint smudge of dust on the floor. Someone had been in the attic recently. It wasn't me. The memorial event was in 2 days, and I knew I had to retrieve that donation box before then. This morning, my granddaughter Emily video called, asking if I could babysit her toddler tomorrow. I agreed, but my mind was on the box. What if it held more clues? This obsession kept me awake. I lay awake last night, seeing Lily's face. Robert's gentle hands, which had held mine through arthritis and loss, now felt like a stranger's. Emily's cheerful plans added pressure. She wanted to stay for lunch, which would cut into my time to visit the historical society. I needed an excuse to slip away. I decided to claim a doctor's appointment. It was a small lie, but it weighed on me. After breakfast, I called the society and confirmed they were open until 5. I had to get that box and look through it alone. I drove my old sedan downtown, the steering wheel slick under my palms. The society was in a quaint brick building, smelling of old paper and polish. The volunteer at the desk, a young woman named Sarah, smiled warmly. "Mrs. Wilkins, we're so glad you're here. Robert's box is in the back. She led me to a storage room, and my pulse quickened. The box was a simple cardboard container, labelled with his name. As I lifted it, Sarah mentioned offhandedly, "Oh, by the way, another gentleman was asking about Robert's things last week, said he was an old friend." My blood ran cold. Who else was interested? I thanked her and carried the box to my car, my arms trembling. Inside the vehicle, I ripped off the tape. There were old maps, notebooks, and a sealed envelope addressed to me, Robert's handwriting. My hands shook as I opened it. It was a letter, dated just before he died. "My dearest Helen," it began, "if you're reading this, I've failed to destroy it. Some truths are too heavy to bear alone." I skimmed the words, my vision blurring. He confessed to knowing about Lily's disappearance, but claimed it was an accident. But the photos told a different story. A receipt fell out for a storage unit across town, paid for annually. The unit number was circled. Why would he need a storage unit? I drove home in a daze, the box on the passenger seat. When I arrived, Emily was already there with her son, playing in the driveway. "Grandma, you're back early," she said. I forced a smile, but my mind was on that storage unit. As I helped her inside, I noticed a car parked down the street, a dark sedan I hadn't seen before. The driver seemed to be watching the house. Was it the man Sarah mentioned? I needed to check that unit, but now I had company. Emily chattered about her day, oblivious. I stored the box in my bedroom closet, behind my winter coats. Later, while heating soup, I peeked out the window. The car was gone. But on my porch, tucked under the mat, was a folded note. It read, "Stop digging, for your family's sake." The note was typed, with no signature. I crumpled it and shoved it in my pocket, my heart racing. I planned to visit that storage unit today, but the threat changed everything. I lost my sense of safety. Every noise made me jump. Mark's call added pressure. He reminded me about a family dinner this weekend. He said, "Mum, you've been distant lately. Is everything okay?" I lied again, saying I was just tired. But I knew I had to act before whoever left that note returned. I needed to see what was in Unit 114. I drove to the storage facility on the edge of town, a place with rows of identical garage doors. The office was small, and the manager, a bored-looking man in his 50s, glanced up from his computer. I showed him Robert's key and the receipt. He nodded. "Unit 114, right? Your husband prepaid for years. No one's been in there since he passed." He directed me to the location, and I walked through the echoing aisles. The unit was at the far end, shrouded in shadows. My key turned smoothly in the lock, and I rolled up the door. Inside, it was crammed with boxes and old furniture. Dust motes danced in the slivers of light. I started opening boxes, finding more of Robert's things, tools, books, and files. Then I uncovered a leather-bound journal. The first page was dated decades ago, detailing his hunts. My stomach churned as I read entries about women he followed, their habits, their disappearances. Lily's name was there, with a notation, "Regrettable, but necessary." He wrote about keeping trophies, small items from each one. In a separate box, I found a collection of rings and necklaces. One was Lily's graduation ring. I sank to the floor, tears hot on my cheeks. Robert wasn't just involved. He was a predator. Suddenly, the overhead lights flickered and went out. I was plunged into darkness, the only sound my ragged breathing. Had someone cut the power? I fumbled for my phone, turning on the flashlight. The beam revealed footprints in the dust near the door. Fresh ones, not mine. Someone had been here recently. I heard a distant rumble, like an engine starting. Scrambling, I stuffed the journal and Lily's ring into my purse. As I hurried back to my car, I saw the dark sedan from earlier idling at the exit. It sped away before I could get the license plate. Back in the driver's seat, I locked the doors and checked the journal again. Tucked in the back was a photo of Robert with another man, someone I recognized from our church. The caption read, "My only confidant." The man in the photo was Frank, Robert's old fishing buddy. He had always been kind, bringing me soup when I was sick. Now I wondered if he knew about Robert's double life. I needed to confront Frank, but I had to be careful. It felt like another betrayal from a trusted friend. The pressure grew when Linda invited me over for coffee, saying I looked stressed. "Mum, you need to get out more," she said. I agreed to visit, but my mind was on Frank. I needed to see him before he realized I was digging. I drove to Frank's house, a cozy cottage on the other side of town. His garden was neat, just like Robert's used to be. When he answered the door, he seemed surprised, but welcoming. "Helen, what a pleasure. Come in." I sat in his living room, the air smelling of lemon polish. I showed him the photo from the journal, watching his face closely. His smile faded. "Oh, that old thing. Robert and I were close, you know." I asked directly if Robert ever mentioned Lily or other women. Frank's eyes darted away. "Helen, some things are better left in the past. Robert was a good man." But his hands trembled as he poured tea. He admitted Robert had confided in him about mistakes, but swore it was all resolved. Frank urged me to drop it, for my own peace. Then he mentioned offhandedly, "You know, Robert left a safety deposit box at First National. He gave me the key years ago, just in case." My pulse quickened. Why hadn't I known about this? Frank handed me a small key from his drawer. "Take it. But be careful, Helen. There are people who don't want this uncovered." I thanked him and left, the key heavy in my palm. As I walked to my car, I noticed the same dark sedan parked a block away. This time, it didn't drive off. At home, I called the bank. The safety deposit box was still in Robert's name, and I could access it with the key and his death certificate. I had the certificate in my files. But first, I had to deal with Linda's coffee visit. When I arrived, she hugged me tightly. "Mum, you look pale." We sat at her kitchen table, and she talked about her kids, but I could barely focus. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "The box isn't worth it." How did they know? I excused myself to the bathroom, splashing water on my face. In the mirror, I saw my reflection. An old woman with secrets. When I returned, Linda was on the phone, her voice low. "Yes, she's here now. I'll keep an eye on her." Was she talking about me? Linda's words echoed in my mind. Was my own daughter involved? I had to get into that safety deposit box today before anyone could stop me. I felt more and more alone. I couldn't trust anyone now. Pressure was coming from all around. The unknown texter, Frank's warnings, and Linda watching me closely. I pretended to have a headache and left early, promising to rest. Instead, I drove to First National Bank, the key burning a hole in my purse. The bank was busy, but the manager recognized me. "Mrs. Wilkins, here for Robert's box." He led me to the vault, and I inserted the key. The box slid out, heavier than I expected. Inside, I found bundles of cash, old documents, and another journal. This one was newer, with entries up to a month before Robert's death. He wrote about his legacy and someone he called the successor. My hands shook as I read. He mentioned a list of names, women who were potential targets if he couldn't continue. One name was my granddaughter Emily. I gasped, stumbling back. Robert had plans beyond his death. I quickly photocopied the journal pages at the bank's machine, then placed the originals back. As I left, the manager said, "Oh, Mrs. Wilkins, a man was here earlier asking about that box. He didn't have authorization, so I turned him away." I thanked him and hurried to my car. The dark sedan was in the parking lot, and this time the window rolled down. A man in his 40s leaned out. "Helen, we need to talk. It's about Robert." His voice was calm, but his eyes were hard. I froze, then got in my car and locked the doors. He didn't follow, but as I drove away, I saw him on the phone, watching me. At home, I spread the copies on my kitchen table. The journal detailed how Robert passed on his methods to someone else, the successor. There were coded references to meetings and drop points. I realized this wasn't just about the past. It was ongoing. My family was in danger. I needed to go to the police. But with what? Circumstantial evidence from a dead man? And if Linda was involved, who could I trust? I decided to start with a lawyer, someone unrelated to our circle. I made an appointment for tomorrow, citing estate matters. As I tidied up, my phone rang. It was Frank, his voice strained. "Helen, I shouldn't have given you that key. He knows. Watch your back." The line went dead. I checked my front door. It was unlocked, though I was sure I'd locked it. On the floor, just inside, lay a single faded photograph of Lily, with a fresh red X over her face. The red X on Lily's photo felt like a warning shot through my heart. I had to see that lawyer today before whoever left it returned. I called his office from my kitchen phone, my hands shaking so badly I misdialed twice. The receptionist confirmed my 10 o'clock appointment. I needed to get legal advice on how to use Robert's journals to protect my family without exposing us to more danger. I had lost my peace. I hadn't slept, jumping at every car door slam outside. I felt more pressure when Linda texted, asking if I wanted to join her for grocery shopping this morning. I declined, saying I had errands, but I wondered if she was checking on me. I drove to the lawyer's office, a modern building downtown, and parked in the nearly empty lot. Inside, the air conditioning was too cold, making me shiver. Mr. Evans, a man in his 50s with a calm demeanour, greeted me and led me to a conference room. I spread out the journal copies and explained everything, omitting only the most gruesome details. He listened intently, then leaned forward. "Helen, this is serious, but without physical evidence or a living perpetrator, it's hard to prosecute. However, Robert's estate matters. We can use this to secure your assets and alert authorities discreetly." He suggested drafting a new will and power of attorney to cut out anyone suspicious, like Frank, or even Linda, if needed. Then he paused, tapping his pen. "There's something else." I pulled Robert's file, and I see he had a life insurance policy I didn't handle. "The beneficiary isn't you. It's a trust in the name of Lily's legacy. Do you know what that is?" I froze. Robert had used my sister's name for a trust. My mind raced. Who controlled it? Mr. Evans promised to investigate, but as I stood to leave, my phone buzzed. Another unknown number. Cancel the lawyer. Or else. How did they know? I hurried to my car, but the dark sedan was parked across the street, engine off. As I drove away, I glanced in the rearview mirror and saw Mr. Evans watching me from the window, his expression unreadable. Was he involved? I needed to find out about Lily's legacy before the lawyer did anything. Back home, I searched Robert's old files in the basement, my knees aching from crouching. I found a folder labeled Insurance, buried under tax returns. Inside was a policy document naming Lily's Legacy Trust as beneficiary, with a P.O. box address. The trustee was listed as Arthur Simmons, a name I didn't recognize. I had to visit that P.O. box today, but it came at a high price. Every moment spent digging felt like betraying Robert's memory, yet I had to know. Mark added to the pressure when he called to remind me about grandson Tommy's birthday party tomorrow. Mum, you'll be there, right? You seem distracted lately. I assured him I would, but my mind was on the trust. I drove to the post office, a small branch on the outskirts of town. The clerk, an elderly man, helped me access the P.O. box after I showed Robert's death certificate and my ID. Inside were stacks of bank statements and a key, similar to the safety deposit box key, but smaller. The statements showed regular deposits from an anonymous source, totaling thousands over years. Then I found a letter addressed to Robert, warning him to keep the successor anonymous or risk exposure. My hands trembled. This was bigger than I thought. As I tucked everything into my bag, the clerk said, "You're the second person to ask about this box this week. A man came by yesterday, said he was family." I asked for a description, and he matched the man from the dark sedan. I rushed out, but as I reached my car, my phone rang. It was Frank, his voice urgent. "Helen, meet me at the park now. I have to show you something about Robert." I agreed, but when I arrived, the park was empty. On our usual bench, someone had left a single rose and a note. "Stop now, or Lily won't be the only one gone." The rose and note made my blood run cold. I couldn't stop. I had to protect Emily and the others. I decided to use the small key from the P.O. box, which fit a locker at the bus station. I needed to check that locker today, hoping it held answers about the successor. It was taking a toll on my health. My blood pressure felt sky high, and I skipped my afternoon medication to stay focused. The pressure grew when Linda dropped by unannounced, bringing soup. "Mum, you look pale. Are you eating enough?" She stayed for an hour, watching me closely, and I had to pretend everything was fine. After she left, I drove to the bus station, a dusty place smelling of diesel and old coffee. Locker 42 opened smoothly, revealing a slim notebook and a USB drive. I took them to my car and plugged the drive into my laptop. It contained audio files, recordings of Robert talking to someone he called the Heir. His voice was calm, instructional, discussing methods and clean-ups. One file mentioned a meeting place, the old mill outside town. Then I heard a familiar voice respond. It was Frank, reassuring Robert that the legacy would continue. My stomach churned. Frank was the successor? I needed to confront him. But as I started the car, the dark sedan pulled up beside me. The window rolled down, and the man inside nodded slowly. "You're getting too close, Helen." He drove off before I could respond. Back home, I hid the notebook under my mattress. That night, I couldn't sleep, replaying Robert's voice. At dawn, I checked my phone, a missed call from Frank. When I called back, his wife answered, crying. "Helen, Frank's in the hospital. He fell down the stairs last night. He's asking for you." I drove to the hospital, my mind racing. Was Frank's fall an accident or a warning? I had to get the truth from him about the successor role. It was emotionally draining. Seeing Frank frail in a hospital bed reminded me of Robert's last days, and I felt a pang of guilt for suspecting him. I felt pressure from the nurses, who limited visiting time, and from Linda, who texted asking where I was. I told her I was visiting a friend. Frank was in a private room, his leg in a cast. When we were alone, he grasped my hand. "Helen, I'm sorry." Robert made me promise to look after things, but I never knew about Lily. He said it was about protecting his research. He confessed that Robert had involved him in documenting his actions, but Frank thought it was for a book or something. He gave me a name. Arthur Simmons, the trustee, was Robert's cousin from out of state, and he might know more. Frank warned me to be careful. He believed someone else was now in charge, someone more dangerous. Then he lowered his voice. Check Robert's old fishing cabin. He kept a safe there. As I left, a doctor stopped me. Mrs. Wilkins, your friend had traces of a sedative in his system. This wasn't just a fall. My heart sank. Back in the parking lot, I saw the dark sedan again, but this time it followed me halfway home. I took a detour and lost it, but when I arrived, my front door was slightly ajar. Inside, nothing was stolen, but on the kitchen table, someone had placed a fresh photo of Emily playing in her yard with a red circle around her face. Emily's photo with the circle made my decision for me. I had to go to the fishing cabin now, no matter the risk. I needed to find that safe, and whatever evidence it held about the current threat. It risked my safety. I was venturing alone into an isolated area, and my arthritis made the drive painful. The pressure increased when Mark called, angry that I missed Tommy's party planning call. Mum, you're forgetting things. Do we need to talk about assisted living? I choked back tears and promised to be more present. I drove to the cabin, a rustic place by a lake that Robert and I hadn't visited in years. The key was under the mat, just where he always kept it. Inside, dust covered everything, and the smell of mildew hung in the air. I found the safe behind a loose panel in the bedroom closet. It was a small fireproof box, and I used the combination Robert always used, our anniversary. Inside, I found more journals, cash, and a list of names with dates, potential targets, including Emily and other young women in our family. But what made me gasp was a recent addition. A printed email from Arthur Simmons discussing transferring operations to someone new, and it mentioned a meeting next week at the community centre. I took photos with my phone and stuffed the list into my purse. As I left, I heard a car approaching on the gravel road. I hid behind trees, watching as the dark sedan parked near the cabin. The man got out and went inside. I crept to my car and drove off. But my phone rang immediately. It was Arthur Simmons himself, his voice smooth and cold. Helen, I see you've been busy. Let's meet and discuss this like adults. Your family's safety depends on it. Arthur Simmons's threat to my family's safety left me no choice. I agreed to meet him at the downtown coffee shop in 1 hour. I grabbed my purse, slipping Robert's journal and my phone inside, and set the recorder app to on. I had to get answers and evidence without alerting him. It came at a price. My hands trembled, and I felt a familiar ache in my chest. But I ignored it. The tension grew when Linda called as I was leaving, asking if I could watch Emily this afternoon. I made an excuse about a sudden doctor's appointment, my voice shaking. The coffee shop was bustling, and I chose a table near the back, my eyes scanning for Arthur. He arrived promptly, a well-dressed man in his 60s, with a calm smile that didn't reach his eyes. Helen, thank you for coming, he said, sitting opposite me. He ordered coffee for both of us, then leaned in. I know about Robert's journals. You need to hand them over. It's for everyone's good. I played dumb, asking about Lily's legacy. His smile faded. That trust funds, certain activities. Robert's work must continue, and you're interfering. Then my phone buzzed. A text from Mark. Mum, where are you? Emily's sick, and Linda needs help. I excused myself to call, but Arthur's hand shot out, gripping my wrist. Don't. This is more important. I pulled away, and as I did, a waiter bumped our table, spilling coffee. In the confusion, I noticed Arthur's briefcase was open, and inside, I saw a photo of my grandson, Tommy. My blood ran cold. Arthur quickly closed it, but his phone rang, and he stepped away. I overheard him say, "She has the list. Handle it." When he returned, he handed me a card. "My number. Bring the journals to my office by tomorrow. Or else." He left, and I sat there, stunned. I checked my phone. The recorder had caught everything. But as I stood to leave, the barista handed me a note. "Your friend in the sedan says hello." I rushed outside, but the dark sedan was gone. Back in my car, I played the recording. Arthur's voice was clear, but in the background, I heard another voice, one I recognized from family gatherings. It was Mark's. Hearing Mark's voice on the recording shattered me. How could my own son be involved? I had to confront him, but I needed more proof. I drove home, my mind racing. The emotional toll was heavy. I felt a profound betrayal, and my arthritis flared up from the stress. I was being squeezed from every direction. Arthur's deadline, Emily's illness, and now this. At home, I hid the journals in a new spot, behind the loose brick in the fireplace. Then I called Mark, asking him to come over, saying I needed help with a leaky faucet. He agreed, but his tone was off. While waiting, I checked Robert's old address book and found Arthur's number, but also an entry for M. Wilkins with a secondary phone. My heart sank. Mark arrived, and as he pretended to fix the faucet, I casually mentioned Arthur Simmons. He froze. "Why are you talking to him, Mom?" I showed him the recording on my phone. His face paled. "It's not what you think. Arthur's helping with investments." But then he grabbed my phone, deleting the file. "You need to stop this, Mom. For your own good." I pushed back, demanding the truth. He finally broke down. "Dad involved me years ago. I thought it was about family legacy, but I didn't know about the women. Arthur's in charge now, and he's dangerous." Mark admitted he'd been pressured to keep an eye on me. As he left, he whispered, "Don't trust anyone, not even Linda." I locked the door, trembling. Later, I found a hidden compartment in Robert's old desk, a key taped underneath. It was labeled backup storage. I needed to find what it opened, but my phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. "The storage unit has been cleaned out. You're too late." The message about the storage unit meant someone was ahead of me. I had to use this new key before they found whatever it unlocked. I drove to the bank, where Robert had another safety deposit box, the one this key belonged to. My trust in everyone was fading fast. I felt isolated and paranoid. The strain intensified when Linda visited, bringing soup and insisting I see a doctor for my stress. I agreed to an appointment tomorrow, just to placate her. At the bank, the manager was hesitant, but allowed me access with the key and Robert's certificate. The box contained more journals, a stack of cash, and a sealed envelope addressed to the finder. Inside, Robert confessed everything: his crimes, his regret, and how Arthur had blackmailed him into continuing. He named Arthur as the true mastermind, who had taken over the operations and was targeting new victims. Robert wrote that he'd hidden a final piece of evidence in our granddaughter Emily's toy chest, a locket with Lily's hair inside, proof of his first victim. My hands shook as I read. I needed to get that locket now. But as I left the bank, the dark sedan was parked outside. The man inside nodded at me, then drove away slowly. I rushed to Linda's house, making up a story about wanting to see Emily. Linda was suspicious, but let me in. While she was on a call, I searched the toy chest and found the locket, tucked under a stuffed bear. But as I pocketed it, Linda came back. "What are you doing, Mum?" I lied, saying I was looking for a lost earring. Her eyes narrowed. "Arthur called. He said you're causing trouble." I left quickly, but as I drove off, I saw Linda watching me from the window, her phone to her ear. That night, I examined the locket. Inside was a tiny photo of Lily and a lock of her hair, but engraved on the back was a date, the day she disappeared, and a single word: forgiven. The word forgiven on the locket haunted me. What did Robert mean? I had to piece this together before Arthur made his next move. I decided to visit Frank in the hospital again. He might know more. My health was suffering. I skipped my blood pressure medication, feeling dizzy. I felt Arthur's grip tightening when he texted, "Last chance. Bring everything to the old mill tonight." I ignored it and drove to the hospital. Frank was asleep, but his wife was there. She pulled me aside. "Helen?" Frank woke up briefly. He said to tell you, check Robert's golf clubs. There's a hidden compartment. I thanked her and left. At home, I found Robert's old golf bag in the garage. Inside a hollowed-out driver, I discovered a USB drive and a list of names with addresses, all women in our community, including Emily's teacher. The USB had videos of Arthur meeting with these women, luring them with false promises. One video showed Arthur with Mark, discussing recruitment. My stomach churned. I needed to go to the police, but with what? Circumstantial evidence? I called Mr. Evans, the lawyer, but his line was busy. Then my doorbell rang. It was a woman from social services, saying they received an anonymous tip about my inability to live alone. She asked to inspect the house. I knew this was Arthur's doing, to discredit me or have me declared incompetent. I showed her around, my heart pounding. After she left, I packed a bag with the evidence, planning to drive to the police station. But as I started the car, the dark sedan blocked my driveway. The man got out and walked toward my window. He tapped on the glass. "Arthur wants to talk. Now." I rolled down the window slightly. "I'm not going anywhere." He smiled coldly. "Then let's talk about your grandson's school route. It would be a shame if something happened." The threat to Tommy's safety made my blood run cold. I had to act immediately. I agreed to meet Arthur at the old mill, but I first stopped at a copy shop to duplicate all the evidence, journals, USB, photos, and mailed it to myself at a P.O. box. I was risking everything, and my hands wouldn't stop shaking. The strain was immense. Arthur's man followed me, and I had to lose him in traffic. I drove to the mill, an abandoned building on the outskirts. Arthur was alone, standing by his car. "You have the items?" he asked. I handed him a decoy bag with blank papers. "Now, leave my family alone." He laughed. "It's too late for that, Helen. Robert's legacy is mine, and Mark is helping me secure it." Then Mark stepped out from the shadows. "Mum, I'm sorry. Arthur promised me a share of the trust money. I have debts." I felt a stab of betrayal, but then I played my card. "I've sent all the evidence to the police. They'll be here soon." Arthur's smile vanished. "You bluff." But sirens wailed in the distance. Mark panicked and ran. Arthur grabbed my arm. "This isn't over." He shoved me aside and drove off. The police arrived, but Arthur was gone. I explained everything to the officers, showing them the copies I kept. They took me to the station to give a statement. Later, at home, I felt exhausted but relieved. But as I unlocked my door, I found a note slipped under it. "You think you've won? The successor isn't Arthur. It's someone you'd never suspect." I sank into my chair. the weight of the mystery crushing me. Who could it be? I looked at a family photo on the wall, all of us smiling, unaware of the secrets among us. The note under my door screamed a truth I didn't want to hear. The real successor was still out there, someone I'd never suspect. I had to find out who it was before they hurt my grandchildren. I called Detective Miller, but he didn't answer, so I left a hurried message. My hands shook as I hung up. I needed to search Robert's old filing cabinet in the basement for more clues. The stairs creaked under my weight, and my knees ached with each step. The cabinet was buried under boxes, but I pulled it open. Dust filled the air, making me cough. Inside, beneath insurance papers, I found a small datebook with Robert's handwriting. Entries detailed meetings with S at the local garden centre, discussing new recruits. One date was after Robert's death. My heart pounded. Linda volunteered at that garden centre. Could my own daughter be involved? The thought made me sick. I had to investigate, but my phone buzzed with a text from Linda asking me to babysit Emily tomorrow. I agreed, but fear tightened my chest. Was she setting a trap? The next day, I drove to the garden centre, pretending to shop for flowers. The manager said nothing unusual had happened, but as I left, I saw Linda's car parked nearby. She wasn't supposed to be here. I hid behind a shrub and watched her hand an envelope to a man I didn't recognize. My blood ran cold. I rushed back to my car, but the dark sedan was across the street. The driver nodded slowly before driving away. At home, I re-examined the datebook. On the last page, next to S, was a small doodle of a daisy, Linda's favourite flower since she was 5. I sank into my chair, the weight of betrayal crushing me. The daisy doodle confirmed my worst fear. Linda was the successor. I had to gather proof without her knowing. Babysitting Emily today gave me a chance to search Linda's house. The emotional toll was immense. I felt like I'd failed as a mother. Detective Miller called, saying Arthur was in custody but silent, and they needed more evidence. I promised to help. At Linda's, Emily played with blocks while I slipped into the home office. I searched the desk, finding a false bottom in a drawer. Inside was a key and a list of names, women in our town, including Emily's piano teacher. I took photos with my phone. Suddenly, Linda came home early. "Mum, what are you doing in here?" she asked, her voice sharp. I said I was looking for a pen. Her eyes narrowed. "I know you've been digging. Arthur warned me." She stepped closer, and I thought she might shove me, but she just crossed her arms. "Stop this, for Emily's sake." I left quickly, my heart racing. Back home, I found the key fit a locker at the train station. I drove there immediately. Locker 12 held a journal with Linda's handwriting, detailing how Robert groomed her to take over. She wrote about maintaining the legacy and listed future targets. One entry mentioned using family events to isolate victims. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Your doctor's appointment is confirmed for tomorrow." I hadn't made any appointment. Linda was trying to have me declared unfit. The fake doctor's appointment was Linda's move to discredit me. I had to act fast to protect myself and expose her. I decided to confront Detective Miller with the new evidence. It was a heavy burden. I felt alone, and my blood pressure spiked, but I couldn't stop. I drove to the police station, the journal, and photos in my bag. Miller listened carefully as I showed him everything. He agreed it was compelling, but said they needed more to arrest Linda. He suggested wearing a wire to get a confession. The idea terrified me. I'd be betraying my daughter. That evening, Linda called, inviting me over for dinner. "I want to apologize, Mom," she said. I agreed, setting up the recorder app on my phone. At her house, the atmosphere was tense. After Emily went to bed, Linda served coffee. "I know you found my journal," she said calmly, "but you don't understand. Dad needed me to continue his work. It's about protecting our family's future." I asked about the targets, and she admitted selecting women who threatened our stability. Then she leaned in. "If you go to the police, I'll have to prove you're unstable. Remember your little episode last year?" I had fainted once from stress, and she was using it against me. I excused myself to the bathroom, stopping the recording. When I returned, Linda was on the phone. "She's here. Yes, the paperwork is ready." I left quickly, but as I drove off, I saw the dark sedan following me. I lost it by taking back roads, but when I got home, my front door was unlocked. Inside, on the table, was a forged document from a doctor stating I had dementia. The forged dementia diagnosis was Linda's ultimate weapon. I had to use the recording to stop her before she could file it. I called Detective Miller, and we met at a quiet cafe. He listened to the recording and agreed it was enough for an arrest. But he warned me Linda might flee if she suspected. I felt a mix of relief and sorrow. My own daughter had become a monster. Miller arranged for officers to pick her up at home. I waited at my house, pacing the floor. My phone rang. It was Emily, crying. "Grandma, Mommy is packing a suitcase. She says we have to leave." I told her to stay put and called Miller back. He said they were on their way. I drove to Linda's, my hands gripping the wheel. When I arrived, police cars were already there. Linda was in handcuffs, her face pale. She saw me and shouted, "You did this! You ruined everything!" Emily ran to me, sobbing. I held her tight as Linda was led away. Later, at the station, Miller confirmed they had enough evidence to charge her with conspiracy and threats. But as I filled out paperwork, he pulled me aside. "Helen, we found something in Linda's car, a list with new names, including yours. She wasn't working alone. Someone else is still out there." My heart sank. The real successor was still free. With Linda in custody, I thought the nightmare was over, but Miller's warning meant the successor was still active. I had to ensure Emily's safety and find who was left. I took Emily to my house, setting up the guest room for her. The emotional weight was staggering. I'd lost my daughter, and now I feared for my granddaughter. The next day, I sorted through Linda's things from the police evidence box. Among them, I found a keychain with a charm from the local community centre. I remembered the emails about meetings there. I drove to the centre, Emily in tow, pretending to inquire about classes. The director, Mrs. Gable, greeted us warmly. But when I mentioned Robert's name, her smile faded. "I'm sorry I can't help you," she said quickly. As we left, I saw a familiar man, the one from the garden centre, talking to Mrs. Gable. He glanced at me, then hurried away. Back home, I checked Robert's old contacts and found Mrs. Gable's name listed as associate. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "You should have stopped while you could." Attached was a photo of Emily and me leaving the community centre. I held Emily close, realizing the network was deeper than I thought. That night, I read Emily a bedtime story, her small hand in mine. As she slept, I vowed to protect her, no matter what. But looking at her peaceful face, I knew this was far from over. The photo of Emily and me leaving the community centre arrived with the text, and I knew we were in immediate danger. I called Detective Miller, but his voicemail was full. I had to secure our safety and uncover the real successor now. I packed a small bag for Emily and me, deciding to stay at a motel for the night. I lost my peace of mind. Every shadow seemed to move, and Emily clung to me, sensing my fear. I felt the tension rise when my phone buzzed again. Another text. The community center has eyes everywhere. Stop looking. I drove to a cheap motel on the highway, checking in under a false name. Once in the room, I searched online for Mrs. Gable's background. I found she was on the board of several local charities, including one Robert supported. Then, I remembered Robert's old laptop in my storage. I had to retrieve it, but leaving Emily alone felt wrong. I waited until she fell asleep, then drove home quickly. The house felt eerie, but I grabbed the laptop and rushed back. On the way, a car followed me for a few blocks, but I lost it. Back at the motel, I booted the laptop. Robert's files were password protected, but I guessed our anniversary. It worked. I found emails between him and Mrs. Gable discussing recruitment events and funding. One email mentioned a benefactor who ensured silence. As I read, Emily stirred in her sleep. My phone lit up with a call from an unknown number. I answered, and a distorted voice said, "You should have left well enough alone. The child is next." The line went dead. I held Emily closer, my heart pounding. Then I noticed a file named Legacy List on the desktop. I opened it, and it contained names and addresses. But one name was highlighted, my own. Seeing my name on the legacy list meant I was a target, and I had to act before they struck. I needed to get this evidence to Detective Miller in person, but I couldn't risk taking Emily to the police station. I called Miller from the motel room, explaining the situation. He agreed to meet me at a secure location, a coffee shop near the station. It was emotionally draining. I was terrified for Emily, and my hands shook as I dressed her. We drove to the meeting spot, and I kept Emily close, her small hand in mine. Miller arrived, and I showed him the laptop files. He confirmed Mrs. Gable was under observation, but warned they needed more for an arrest. Then, my phone buzzed. A text from Mark. "Mum, where are you? Linda's lawyer is asking for you." I ignored it, but Miller noticed. "Your son might be involved deeper than we thought," he said. I felt the anxiety grow as I saw a familiar car across the street, the dark sedan. I pointed it out to Miller, and he radioed for backup. But as we waited, Emily tugged my sleeve. "Grandma, I'm scared." I hugged her, realizing I had to get her to safety. Miller suggested placing us in protective custody, but I declined, fearing it would draw more attention. We left through the back exit, and I drove to a friend's house, someone I hadn't spoken to in years. But as I parked, I saw Mark's car down the block. He was watching us. My phone rang. It was Mark. "Mum, we need to talk. It's about Dad's will." I hung up, but a new text came through. "You can't hide forever. The network has people everywhere." I looked at Emily, her eyes wide with fear, and knew I had to end this soon. Mark's presence at my friend's house meant he was tracking me, and I had to confront him to protect Emily. I drove to a public park, where I could meet him in the open. I called him, agreeing to talk, but on my terms. I lost my trust in my own son. Every word felt like a betrayal. We met on a bench, Emily playing nearby where I could see her. Mark looked tired. "Mum, I'm sorry for everything, but you need to stop. Arthur's people are still out there, and they're dangerous." I asked about the successor, and he admitted he didn't know, but suspected Mrs. Gable was a front for someone higher up. Then he handed me a key. "Dad gave this to me before he died. It's for a storage unit he rented under a fake name. He said it held the truth about Lily." My heart ached. Why hadn't he told me sooner? The tension increased as I noticed a woman watching us from a distance, Mrs. Gable. I took the key and left quickly. Emily in tow. We drove to the storage facility, a place I'd never been. Unit 77 was small, and inside I found boxes of documents and a sealed envelope. As I opened it, my phone rang. Detective Miller. "Helen, we have a warrant for Mrs. Gable, but she's vanished. Be careful." I hung up and read the letter. It was from Robert, confessing that Mrs. Gable was his handler. But the real mastermind was someone in our family, someone I trusted implicitly. The letter ended with, "You'll never suspect them." I packed the documents, but as I turned to leave, the storage unit door slammed shut, trapping us inside. The lights went out, and Emily screamed. Trapped in the dark storage unit with Emily, I had to stay calm and find a way out. I used my phone's flashlight, scanning the walls for an emergency release. Emily clutched my leg, sobbing. Our safety was at stake. I felt a panic attack coming on, but fought it. I found a latch near the door and pried it open, but it was stuck. My anxiety spiked as I heard footsteps outside. Then, my phone had a signal, and I called 911, whispering our location. The dispatcher promised help, but the footsteps grew closer. I shoved against the door, and it gave way slightly. Using a box as a wedge, I forced it open enough for us to squeeze out. We emerged into the alley, but the dark sedan was parked there, engine running. I grabbed Emily and ran to my car, locking the doors. As I drove off, I saw Mrs. Gable standing nearby, on the phone. I headed to the police station, but Detective Miller called. "Helen, we found something. Mrs. Gable's financial records show large payments to an account linked to your family trust." I asked who controlled it, and he said, "It's under a joint name, yours and Robert's. But there's a third signatory, your grandson, Tommy's father." My mind reeled. Tommy's father. My son-in-law, David? He had always been quiet, but I never suspected him. I pulled over, my hands trembling. Emily asked, "Grandma, are we safe now?" I didn't know how to answer. Then a text came from David. "We need to talk about the trust. Meet me at home." But home wasn't safe anymore. I drove to a different motel, but as I checked in, I saw David's car in the parking lot. He was waiting for us. David's presence at the motel confirmed he was involved, and I had to protect Emily from him. I pretended not to see him and drove away quickly, heading to the police station. Cutting ties with another family member left me feeling utterly alone. Detective Miller met us outside and took us in. I showed him the storage unit documents and Robert's letter. Miller agreed David was a person of interest and put out an alert. The situation grew more tense when David called, his voice calm. "Helen, you're making a mistake. I'm trying to protect the family's assets." I hung up, but Miller traced the call. It came from my house. We drove there with officers, but David was gone. He left a note on the table. "You should have accepted the legacy. Now it's too late." Miller found evidence on my computer. David had accessed Robert's files remotely. He was the real successor, using the trust to fund the operations. As we searched, my phone buzzed with a message from David. "Check your email." I opened it on Miller's phone. It was a video of David confessing to being groomed by Robert and taking over after his death. He said, "I did it for the family, to keep us secure." But then he threatened, "If you pursue this, I'll disappear with Tommy." My heart sank. My grandson was in danger. Miller assured me they would find him, but as we left, I saw Tommy's school photo on the table, with a red X over it. I held Emily tight, knowing this wasn't over. But for now, we were safe with the police. I looked at Emily's trusting face and vowed to end this, no matter what. David's threat to take Tommy left me no choice. I had to find my grandson before he vanished. Detective Miller coordinated a search, using the video confession as evidence. I stayed with Emily at the station, my mind racing through every possible place David could be. The emotional weight was crushing. I felt responsible for exposing this darkness, and now Tommy was in danger. Miller's team tracked David's phone to a rural area, but the signal was weak. I provided details about David's habits, his favorite fishing spot, the cabin we used for family reunions. The pressure mounted when Mark called, frantic. "Mum, David took Tommy from school. The teacher said he had permission, but he didn't." I assured him we were handling it, but my hands trembled. Miller decided to check the cabin first, and I insisted on going, leaving Emily with a female officer. The drive was long, and my arthritis flared up, but I pushed through. As we approached the cabin, we saw David's car parked haphazardly. Miller signaled his team to surround the area. Through a window, I spotted Tommy sitting quietly at a table, looking scared but unharmed. David was pacing, talking on the phone. I heard him say, "I have to move him tonight. She's too close." Miller moved in, and I waited in the car, my heart pounding. The officers entered, and there was a scuffle. David tried to run out the back, but was caught. Tommy ran to me, sobbing. I held him tight, relief washing over me. But as we drove back, Miller got a call. David wasn't talking, but they found a list in his pocket with new names, including mine and Emily's. The danger wasn't over. With David in custody, I thought we were safe, but his list meant others were still involved. I needed to ensure all evidence was secured and the network dismantled. Back at the station, I gave a full statement, detailing everything from Robert's journals to David's role. I had lost so much. My family was torn apart, and I felt isolated. Mark arrived, apologizing for his part, but I couldn't fully trust him yet. Miller pressed David for information, but he remained silent. Then, a forensic report came in. David's phone records showed calls to a number linked to Mrs. Gable, who was still missing. The pressure intensified when I received a text from an unknown number. "You got David, but the legacy continues. Watch your back." I knew I had to protect Tommy and Emily permanently. Miller suggested placing us in a safe house, but I refused, wanting to end this at home. I decided to review all the evidence one more time, looking for missed clues. At home, with Tommy and Emily sleeping, I spread out the documents. In Robert's old datebook, I found a coded entry about assets and a reference to a safety deposit box at another bank. I called Miller, and we arranged to check it the next day. But that night, I heard a noise outside. Peeking through the blinds, I saw a figure lurking near the driveway. I called 911, but by the time police arrived, they were gone. On my porch, they left a single rose, a symbol from Robert's journals. I locked the doors, realizing the network was still active and watching. The rose on my porch was a clear message. I was still a target. I had to open that safety deposit box today to find the final pieces. Miller accompanied me to the bank, and we accessed the box. Inside, we found more journals, cash, and a ledger detailing payments to various people, including Mrs. Gable and others in the community. One entry mentioned a fallback plan if David was caught, involving a new successor, someone named Jay. My mind raced. Who was Jay? Miller took the evidence, promising to escalate the investigation. The emotional toll was heavy. I was exhausted, and my health was declining. Back home, I focused on Tommy and Emily, trying to provide normalcy. But the pressure didn't stop. My phone buzzed with constant unknown calls, and I had to change my number. Later, Miller called with news. They had located Mrs. Gable at a relative's house in another state. She was arrested and began talking, revealing that Jay was Jonathan, Robert's brother, who lived abroad. Jonathan had been funding the operations and was the true mastermind. Miller said Interpol was involved, but extraditing him would take time. I felt a mix of relief and fear. The head was still out there. That evening, as I read to the children, my doorbell rang. It was a delivery man with a package, no return address. I didn't open it, calling Miller instead. He came and inspected it. Inside was a note. "This isn't over. The legacy lives on." And a photo of Jonathan, smiling, with a date circled, next month. I knew I had to stay vigilant. The photo of Jonathan meant the threat was ongoing, but with Mrs. Gable and David in jail, I could start rebuilding. I focused on securing my family's future, updating my will, and ensuring Tommy and Emily were protected. Miller kept me informed as the legal proceedings began. The consequences were clear. My relationships with Mark and Linda were strained, but we attended family therapy. Linda, facing charges, showed remorse, and Mark tried to make amends. The pressure eased slightly, but I still had nightmares about Robert and Lily. I decided to visit Lily's grave, something I hadn't done in years. I brought flowers and sat there, telling her everything. It was painful, but cathartic. On the way back, I noticed a car following me, but it turned off after a few blocks. I reported it to Miller, who increased patrols near my house. A few days later, Miller called. Jonathan had been arrested in Europe, and extradition was underway. He confessed to being the mastermind, using Robert's network for profit and control. With him caught, the network collapsed. I felt a weight lift, but the sadness remained. I spent time with Tommy and Emily, taking them to the park and baking cookies, trying to create happy memories. But one afternoon, while cleaning, I found one last journal of Robert's hidden in a book. I almost didn't open it, but I did. It was his final confession, written before he died, expressing regret and begging for forgiveness. He wrote that he never meant to hurt Lily. It was an accident that spiraled. I cried, feeling a complex mix of anger and pity. I burned the journal in the backyard, watching the smoke rise, symbolizing an end to the secrets. The ashes of Robert's journal settled in the backyard, and with them, a quiet peace began to grow in my heart. The legal battles were over. Jonathan was extradited and faced charges, while David and Linda received sentences, though I hoped for their rehabilitation. Mark and I reconciled slowly, and he became a devoted uncle to Tommy and Emily. I focused on the present, cherishing the small moments, reading stories, planting flowers, and watching the children play. I sold the house and moved to a smaller cottage near the lake, a place with no memories of Robert. The days were simple. Morning tea on the porch, visits from friends, and weekly calls with Miller, who became a trusted confidant. I joined a support group for families affected by crime, and there I found solace in sharing my story. One spring day, I took Tommy and Emily to Lily's grave, placing fresh daisies, her favourite. I told them about their great-aunt, focusing on her life, not her death. Emily held my hand and said, "Grandma, you're brave." That night, I sat by the window, watching the stars. The past was behind me, and though scars remained, I felt a gentle strength. I had protected my family and found a new purpose in nurturing the good left in the world. The legacy of pain was over, replaced by one of resilience and love.